Welcome to the Growth Mindset Signals Atlas. This is where we map out those hidden mental signals, the ones that really drive long-term improvement. And today, we're tracking a really dangerous one, a pattern that quietly traps even the most capable people and just stops their growth, cold.
So let's start with a mystery, one that I'm sure you've seen before. Why do really capable, really smart people plateau so early? I mean, they're cruising along, full of potential, and then suddenly, they hit this invisible wall. They just stop growing. It's not about a lack of ability, and it's definitely not about ambition. So what is really going on here?
Okay, so the signal we're tracking today is, well, it's pretty counterintuitive. For some people, the very things that are supposed to make you grow, things like feedback, real effort, a tough challenge, their brain doesn't see those as opportunities. It actually flags them as threats.
And I want to be super clear here. This isn't about someone being lazy or not having enough willpower. It's much deeper. It's about the underlying mental mechanics. Think of it like a glitch in your brain's operating system or a distorted lens. And through that lens, things like effort and feedback look completely different. Their meaning just gets twisted. Now, this distorted lens, it doesn't just create random problems. It actually creates a really predictable pattern of behavior, one we can break down into three, let's call them invisible traps. So let's dive in and look at the specific symptoms that show us when this fixed mindset is really at play.
So this pattern basically unfolds in three stages. First, we're going to see how a person's identity gets all tangled up with their ability. Then we'll look at how effort gets completely misinterpreted as a sign of weakness. And finally, we'll see how simple little labels can harden into these rigid rules that just box you in.
All right, trap number one, identity fusion. This is a big one. It's this deep belief that your performance, it isn't just what you do, it's who you are. So a thought like, I failed at this project, instantly morphs into, I am a failure. See the difference? It's huge. And this is what leads to a classic misinterpretation. You see someone get really defensive when they get feedback, and you think, wow, what an ego, right? You label it as arrogance. But it's not really about ego. It's a defense mechanism. They're literally protecting what feels like their core identity from what feels like a direct attack.
And here's the bottom line for this trap. When your entire identity is wrapped up in being the smart one, new information stops being useful. It becomes dangerous. Any negative feedback isn't just data you can use to get better. It feels like a direct threat to your very sense of self.
Okay, on to the second trap, and this one's a bit more subtle. It's this idea of effort as inadequacy. It's that quiet, nagging belief in the back of your head that says, if I were really talented at this, I wouldn't have to try so hard. The struggle itself becomes proof that you just don't have what it takes. And this creates such a deep contradiction, doesn't it? Because publicly, we all say, oh, hard work is everything, we praise it. But privately, this fixed mindset completely penalizes it. The internal logic is just brutal. Visible struggle is a public admission of incompetence. So it feels way better to look effortlessly good at something simple than to be caught struggling with something genuinely difficult. So if you follow that logic to its conclusion, what happens? I mean, if putting in effort is a signal of weakness, why on earth would you ever persist when things get really hard? It actually becomes more rational to just quit and protect your image as the one who gets it naturally than it is to keep trying and risk being exposed as an imposter.
All right, the third and final trap is what we call labels as limits. This is all about how those early descriptions of ourselves, the things people told us when we were kids or the stories we started telling ourselves a long time ago, how they slowly stop being simple descriptions and start becoming hard and fast rules for how we live.
Just think about this for a second. Someone says, oh, I'm just not a math person. It feels like they're just stating a fact, right? A simple description. But over time, that's not what it is at all. It becomes a prescription for their behavior. They start unconsciously designing their whole life around not violating that old story. They actively avoid any situation that could possibly challenge it. And that's the real danger. These labels that we never stop to question, they're silently deciding our future for us. They become the invisible fences that keep us from even walking towards certain doors, let alone trying to open them. Okay, so we've seen the three traps. But what's the actual cost? What's the long-term price you pay for living inside this mindset? Because the cost of this mental stillness, it's incredibly high.
And worse, it compounds over time, throughout your entire career.
Think about it like this. You avoid feedback, your learning loop completely collapses. You avoid real effort, you hit a skill ceiling that feels totally natural, but guess what? It's completely self-imposed. You start disengaging from the hard problems, the very ones that would actually make you grow. And what are you left with? A really fragile identity, one that's terrified of change because any new challenge might expose your limits.
So how do you break out of this pattern? The answer isn't some quick tactic or a life hack. It's way deeper than that. It's a fundamental shift in perception. It's about learning to see the exact same world through a totally new lens, one that completely redefines what things like effort and feedback even mean.
This whole reframe is really about interpretation. Look, through that old fixed lens, effort means you're not smart enough. It's a threat. Feedback is a judgment on your worth. But when you switch to the growth lens, the meaning just flips. Effort becomes the process of building a skill. And feedback, it's no longer personal. It's just data. Incredibly valuable data for your next attempt.
Okay, now let's make this personal. Let's turn all this analysis into a kind of diagnostic for you. We're going to forget the generic advice. The only way to really spot these traps in your own life is through some sharp, honest reflection. So I'm going to leave you with 3 questions to really think about.
First question, where have you confused difficulty with inability? Just think about it. Is there a skill you gave up on, not because you couldn't do it, but because the struggle itself felt like a final verdict on your talent?
Second question, which forms of feedback do you instinctively discount or just completely avoid? And really think about why. Is it always from a specific person? Is it about a certain topic? What exactly is that feedback threatening that makes your brain want to just push it away?
And finally, the third question, what's a label about yourself that has gone unexamined for the longest time? You know, that story you tell, I'm not a creative person, I'm just not a leader, or I'm too disorganized. Which one has been with you for years, silently making your choices for you, without you ever stopping to question if it's even true? Because that is where the real work begins.